Okay, so this is going to be a kind of edit with me or walkthrough um, of a courthouse wedding that I shot this past week. So my standard process with any gallery is to import and build smart previews. That way editing is as fast as possible. And I do all my folder structures and everything by date and by keyframe, or not keyframe, by keywords. I'm gonna try to do this all in one shot without too much editing. So mistakes and all, and knuckle cracks as well. But anyway, so yeah, I import everything straight into Lightroom, um, and if I can help it, uh, I don't edit off of hard drives, external hard drives at all. So yeah, so what you're seeing is hopefully not too charring, but I think I've sped this up about 5 times. But basically, I'm just flipping through the gallery on library mode. And so I've got one hand on the arrow keys and then one hand on 3. I just like to mark everything that I'm going to keep as 3. And then later on, I can lower or raise the rating if I choose. But honestly, I don't really rate much more than that. Sometimes I'll rate images, as like 1 or 4 or something if I want to go back and make those specifically black and white. Occasionally, I'll do an entire gallery and then I'll go and rate 5 stars. As like, kind of like an advanced preview or something. Um, but, uh, but typically, yeah, that's kind of my standard process. And as I go through the gallery, every now and then I'll pick one out and try to edit it. So you might see that here a little bit later. But this is kind of just an overall glimpse of my first time looking through the photos too. So, um, if you're a photographer, you kind of know how this is, but um, if you're shooting quite a bit, you don't always have time to go look at the photos after you shot them. So you kind of just shoot and hope, yeah, I think the framing was right, or maybe it wasn't. So what you just saw there was one of those instances where I was like, I want to kind of see how this is going to be edited. Um, because you'll see later in my workflow that I I use Imagen to kind of give my base edits. I guess you could use just a preset, but I find that Imagen does a pretty good job of some of those exposure and white balance tweaks that can kind of just bog you down. And honestly, for the price, it's pretty worth my time to spend a couple cents per photo to get that done. Um, so yeah. As we go through this, I'll kind of point out some things that might have been more challenging as far as lighting goes. Hopefully, if you're paying attention, you're getting a decent idea of what the gallery is looking like, and some colors that I'm going to pull out. So I think we've got not too much longer on the actual culling process, because this was what, 900 something photos. Um, so yeah, so now that I finished reading them, I open Imagen, and I have to go and select all of these little settings. I do straighten, but I don't do any of the other things that they've got, like the skin softening. There's just other programs and other methods that I use that are just better for that. Um, So anyway, this took probably 10 minutes for Imagine to get back to me. So I mean, I don't know how much time that would have saved me. Probably at least 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. Um, I think the lie I told myself was that it would make my editing way faster. And to a degree it has, but ultimately it just ended up making me spend about the same amount of time for a better end product, which um, isn't the desired effect for me, but it's a desired effect for my clients. So um, I'll take that as a neutral dash win for them. This was a cool photo. I was impressed by Lightroom's transformability to kind of straighten that out. Um, so yeah, let me just kind of talk about the day here, and some of my thought processes as these photos go through. So we got to the courthouse. I wasn't really able to take a lot of photos outside of like the actual ceremony room. So I took a few. I risked getting yelled at, but there weren't, there wasn't anyone around that would have said something. So hopefully they don't see this video and then retroactively hit me up. Um, but anyway, yeah, it was kind of small room. Unfortunately, I had to walk in front of people in order to take the photos, so that's a little challenging. But the judge was a real bro and was just like, "Hey, you can go anywhere you want. You can go behind my desk. It doesn't bother me." So I kind of had free reign within that to walk around and take photos. Which, if you've ever been in a situation like this where you're actively trying not to be a distraction, but at the same time, sometimes you just got to be in the way to get the good photo. So I you'll notice that I'm kind of just making a circle around the couple in these photos, just trying to get different angles. And sometimes that helps me to get moments kind of like this, where the groom's parents were holding hands and sharing a moment. So um, lighting wise, it could have been worse. I think. Let me see. Yeah, I mean ISO wasn't even that high for the A7R5 that I use. Um, I would say I've definitely shot in indoor situations where the lighting was worse, um, but you don't have the same kind of like bags under your eyes that most top-down lighting gives. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not the most flattering light, but I've definitely shot in worse. So I was kind of surprised and happy um, that it wasn't uh, that wasn't any worse. And so yeah, my typical thought with situations like this is just keep moving, and then if I find good light, which in this case I didn't really find good light, then I just keep moving and I keep looking for emotion. So you'll see that a lot. You'll see someone kind of on the tail end of laughing or wiping a tear away. I'm looking for those moments, and sometimes I'll pick a person and I'll just wait until that happens for that one person. Um, I feel like that's a strategy that works pretty well. Um, so yeah. So on this part, this is clearly um, after their first kiss as husband and wife, and then the judge asked, "Hey, does anyone have anything to say?" And some people got up. You actually notice in the background there was a tear in the wall. I ended up removing that in Photoshop later on. I don't know that I recorded that, but there was like a ceiling tile missing as well that I went in and pulled out. And this shot's actually on my A7 III that I keep like a 20 millimeter Viltrox lens on, just in situations like this where you need a little extra width. Um, so I keep that in the bag for times like this, and so I'm really honestly glad that I had it for that. Speaking of gear, my main camera is the Sony A7R5, And the lens that I rock and recommend is the Tamron 35 to 150, and that's an f2 to 2.8. So it's f2 at the widest, and then I think it starts stopping down at about a 50, maybe not, like a 45. It starts stopping down at 2.2, then 2.5, then 2.8 eventually, through the rest of the focal range. But that thing is a beast, let me tell you. Um, yeah, I mean, you could pretty much do it all with that one lens, apart from being in a really small, enclosed room with a big group. So it's kind of the only perfect scenario where it doesn't work is the one I was shooting in for this specific day. You'll see here, this sign was just the bane of my existence. Had it not covered her feet perfectly, I could have removed the entire thing. I could have removed the pole, but I just couldn't. And it was one of those scenarios where this was at about 10:30, 11 a.m. So lighting was just starting to get pretty horrible. And they initially wanted to shoot on the other side of this city hall building in Athens. Um, and earlier in this gallery, I got a photo of them on it. And I told him, I was like, look, we will take them here if you want to, but the lighting is not great. And there's going to be half your face in shadow and half of your face in light. And it's not going to be ideal. And so I just leveled with them. I think that's important when you're working with clients, just to be honest. Like, hey, I can totally do this if that's what you want, but here's why I recommend we don't. And I feel like when you lead with that kind of vulnerability is not the right word, but when you lead with honesty, they take that genuineness super well. Like even if they really, really wanted it, they'll go, you know what, he will accommodate this, but I think we should probably listen to his expertise on it. So they did, and so we moved to the other side. But we had to deal with that sign. So it's kind of a trade-off. There wasn't there wasn't a great place to take like bigger group photos. And so even here, like, and you can see when I started on this, I had to Photoshop out or Lightroom out now, some trash cans. We had to move a couple trash cans. So this wasn't the ideal place either. And you'll see later on where we kind of finally land that I was much happier with lighting wise and kind of just everything. I think the background here is just really busy. But the story is pretty heavily in Athens. Um, so I think it works because for them the meaning is higher than just a government building. Um, so yes, some of what you're seeing here is like trying to edit light at one of the harshest times of the day. Oh, this was a funny moment. We were just talking, trying to get everyone to come, and he said, "It's like herding cats." Uh, all right, so this is the lighting setup that we kind of walked into. We were walking back to the courthouse where they actually got married, and I spotted the top of this building up this ramp, and I was like, "Can we go up there?" And they were like, "Sure." We walked up there, and it was a bank parking lot, um, and it was a little empty. So we just walked up, and as I said, I don't know how much time we're gonna have here, but let's get a couple shots of you guys, just a couple. And then if nobody kicks us out, we'll try to get some family shots. And if no one kicks us out, then we'll just keep going until they do. Um, and so that worked out pretty well. I think we knocked these out in about 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. And really that's because we didn't have a list coming into it, which if you've not done wedding or events or whatever, the prep work on the front end is pretty crucial. But this booking was such a unique one that we didn't really have that structure to lean into. So we just had to kind of come up with combinations on the fly, and all their guests were kind of family or very close knit friends. So they kind of wanted like all combinations of different groups together. And since we didn't have a list that we were crossing off, it was like, did we do this shot? I don't know. We might as well do it again. So I think I delivered to them the full, I delivered to them all the edited photos. So if they got a duplicate group photo, then that's what they got. I wasn't going to go in and cross check and make another list, for them. But yeah, I mean, the lighting, as you can see, just turned out really good. And, because I didn't have to do such crazy work to make up for that lighting, I was able to do some more like photo cleanup. I find that it takes your images just that extra 10% when you spend the time to knock out stuff like that, just like random dark spots that will stick out. When you remove those, and you'll see later on, I try my hand at removing little signs in the background, and just kind of anything that can be distracting. When you spend the extra time to get rid of those things, um, it really makes a big impact at the end of the day. So you'll see some of those I do in Lightroom, but I find that Photoshop is just, even if Lightroom gives you the same result, it's slow. Like, it's just not as quick as Photoshop is. And actually, Photoshop has a remove tool um, on top of like their generative AI, and that remove tool is kind of crazy, honestly. Um, if you need to do 20, 30 images of the same thing, uh, that remove tool, try it out and let me know how it goes. Because I love it. I use that a lot. I'm pretty proficient with Photoshop though. So what you saw there, me drawing on her hand, what you can't really tell here is it's like 40 degrees. So that was the other part of the lighting setup that we found. It was in direct sunlight, which kept everybody from freezing. And so some of what you'll see when I'm doing some of these masks on uh, the groom's nose and hands and stuff is just trying to cut back on redness and kind of clamminess or anything that has to do with like your hands being cold. So yeah, that's that. So this is actually after I've sent the family away. So we did all those photos. I said, "Hey, you guys go ahead and go on to the restaurant," because they were going to do like a luncheon. This was on Valentine's Day, and so they needed to go kind of settle the reservation. And I just told them, "Hey, like I'm gonna take more photos with the couple, but you guys can go ahead and go on." And so they did. And I told the couple after, I was just like, "Hey, I figured, even if they have to wait, at least they're not waiting around watching you guys as we take photos." I know that sometimes that can be already kind of awkward if you're not used to it, which most people aren't. Um, and so that's just a tip. You may never be in a situation like this. This one was pretty unique, in that the family didn't have a reception to go to really, or any other thing to occupy their time, other than just kind of stand around and watch. So yeah, I highly recommend if you can bring the group down to just you and the couple when you're taking their photos. You're gonna get um, you're gonna make them feel more at ease and more comfortable doing that every single time. That's probably like a no-brainer to most people, but you know, if it's not, then maybe you learn something. I guess that's my hope with this video, that even if you put me on mute, that maybe there's some technique or something that I do in my natural kind of workflow that you can pick up and take, because that's what I do when I watch people edit. I just I look for those little things that they do, that I rewind the video and say, "Wait, what was that?" And then I incorporate that into my workflow, and it makes me a better photographer, better editor, better human being. No, not really. Or maybe, I mean, I'm sure watching a video can make you a better person, but anyway, I'm not gonna go down that tangent. So yeah, so what you're seeing here is me trying my hand at removing some of these cars, because it's like the only distraction in the photo. And surprisingly, Lightroom was doing a pretty decent job at taking it out. I think sometimes when you edit those things, you go, man, it doesn't pass. But if they're not looking at that exact spot, they're not gonna know. Like, unless they compare one to one, uh, like 3 photos, I would say that's the time you really can't get away with it, when you don't change the framing at all, because it's pretty glaring that that's changing when you flip through the photos real quick. But anyway, I do wanna talk about this photo set because there was a lot more kind of editing involved. Um, like I said before, the lighting at this time of day isn't super ideal. So if you find a decent pocket of light, or framing of your subject that's interesting, then you kind of just have to run with it. And so there was this kind of longer corridor with these awesome arches right outside of the courthouse, and I knew that it was going to be more environment portrait heavy for the end of the gallery here. So that's why you're seeing a lot more kind of wide angle shots of the couple. I also find if your couple's not used to modeling, which most people aren't, then just having them focus on each other and kind of framing them up in the environment can be kind of a good way to mitigate some of that awkwardness of, hey, I'm going to put a camera lens like directly in your face and tell you to do certain things. you know, um, I think even as photographers, sometimes we can lose touch with like how intimidating it is to have a camera lens just stuck in your face all the time. So they really did a great job of being good sports about it, and um, they did not complain at all. If anything, I feel like I asked them to do quite a bit, and they were really good sports about it. So props to them. I don't know if they'll ever watch this, but props to them. I love working with them. They were pretty fun. So we're we're closing in on the final stretch here, and so some of these are just after I've spent, an hour and a half with a couple, I kind of get a vibe for who they are. And so some of these may not be groundbreaking poses, but I felt like they captured them a little bit better than the standard ones that I have in my, quote unquote bag of poses. And also, like any photo shoot, there's a bit of improv involved. So you see a bench, you see tree, like there is a part that the environment kind of plays into it as well. Um, so yeah, the one thing that I like to ask kind of towards the end is, hey, is there anything that you wanted that we haven't done? Because inevitably people have expectations, but if you never give them a chance to make those expectations known, um, then they may not even know how to express that they um, didn't have their expectations met, but they'll feel that way. And so, one of the things I like to do, kind of at the end of sessions in general, is just to go, "Hey, is there anything that um, any shot that you wanted to do that we haven't done yet?" Um, and if nothing else, it just gives me a second to breathe and not have to produce creativity wise. And it also gives them a chance to go, "Oh, I saw this one thing," and it gives them almost a little bit of ownership over the end results. Um, like their needs were kind of cared for, or at least acknowledged within the space. So it's kind of more collaborative in that realm. Um, so yeah, all that being said, uh, we finished these last 5 6 photos, and I asked that question, and the bride said, "Oh, well, I wanted to get some photos um, at the front of the courthouse." And initially, when I got to the courthouse, I was looking for this shot, and we walk around, and there was this large, kind of ugly, um, handicap ramp. It was like a temporary ramp that had been put up, but the door was also like there was no access through that door. And so, uh, I just said, "Well, we can try to frame up some photos here." And as you could see towards the end, we actually got some good ones. But the last thing I like to do at the end of my galleries is just to do kind of a once over, and just kind of pick up any stragglers, any last second edits, and then I'll set it aside and go through it one more time. But that's gonna be it for this one. So thanks for watching. See you next time.